Yeah, actually, just got back home about an hour ago, but work has continued apace, as you know, pretty much from when I got back.
I was in KFC earlier and I saw they were offering jobs for £10 an hour.
Oh, that's so. That's more than they pay you, isn't it, Jeff?
Well, technically, I make £3 an hour,
Do you
What?
really technically make £3 an hour?
but I'm paid 24 hours.
I don't know if I like that better.
Within a day, it's like £72 or something.
God bless the British Army.
Exactly.
But, let's see. Do we have any other people that we need to bring
I want
up
to go
here?
gym.
Looks like it's more or less everybody's here. All the important folk. Oh, we can bring up
Misty
Michelle.
wants to talk.
Yeah, Misty, no, you're not gonna come up here. Come on now.
No lesbians allowed.
Stop requesting, Misty. I will kill you. Hello, Michelle. Let's invite him. All right. So,
Ah,
welcome.
so that's
All
how
right.
it works.
Yeah, pretty much. You just make a request and then I can bring you up.
Yeah,
All
right
right.
now.
So let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and give a brief introduction, and then what we're going to do is we'll take you guys Q&A between. First, we'll start in the voice chat so that everybody can ask their questions. Come up and either ask a question of me or anybody on our team. And then if you guys have any additional questions and either you're nervous about coming up here and speaking, or if you can't use your mic right now, you can submit questions in general. Just tag either Alex or myself so we'll see it. Don't do that just yet, because if I get a million tags, it's going to be a problem. But once we open the floor for text questions, we'll try to answer whatever questions that you have. But I mean, let's go ahead and get into it. So, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for coming in to listen in on our progress as a community thus far. I know a lot of you have eagerly solicited consistent information about the progress of our development as far as building and scripting and GFX and UI, battle features, and other aspects of what we are confident will allow Hegemony to stand apart from its competing communities in the Napoleonic genre. My lead developers and I are happy to answer any and all questions you might have about what our future objectives are, what our current progress stands at, and potentially any clarifying questions you may have, especially about nation requirements and how we plan to support the participating nations in our community. With that said, I do want to take the time to preempt a single question that I know a lot of people have on their mind in the interest of not having to rehash this issue a whole bunch of times so that everyone can have their opinion considered and their questions answered. A lot of you want to know how the scripting side of things has been going thus far, as we've produced a lot of demos regarding building, 3D modeling, and UI, but not nearly as much of the scripting functions. And unfortunately, as it stands currently, so Hegemony has three scripters, two of which are paid professionals who have a plethora of experience in Lua and have worked extensively in the Napoleonic genre on muskets, cannons, sabers, and other weapons of the era. But as it stands, what we have to do at this time, because they're paid professionals, is prioritize the larger, more intensive functions of the game. Stuff like server optimization, field of view rendering, fully communicative generated code-based battle servers, flag-based company systems with light and grenadier detachments, capturable garrison objectives that reward teams with score for defending contestable positions and penalize them for being over garrisoned. These kind of features are both time and cost intensive. And getting them out of the way first lets us know not just how much of our budget can be committed towards the other necessities of the game, cannons, muskets, rifles, all of which absolutely will be featured, but also in addition, the luxury features that many of you have inquired about in dev suggestions. So, I've heard people ask, questions of their wildest dreams. What if we could capture cannons and maybe we could spike them, and maybe the enemy would be able to recapture those cannons, and they win score for recapturing cannons, and maybe we win score for capturing cannons. I've heard people ask, will we be able to have light and heavy and maybe medium cavalry units so that maybe light units get a speed boost and they move faster than heavy cavalry, but heavy cavalry are a little bit more resilient and are better in a cav versus cav fight and maybe do more morale damage. That kind of stuff we would love to feature, but for us, it costs us money. Now, we don't think that we're going to hit the cap of our budget anytime too soon, but we're certainly not going to try to go way over budget if we can help it. We do have two different funding sources, both of which are more than happy to provide ample support to Hegemony, so we have no doubts about our liquidity. But we do want to make sure that we're not spending more money on this community than is feasible. I start to run up $10,000 bills. Your partner starts looking at your credit card bill and starts asking some questions. You feel me? So we want to make sure that we can keep this within reasonable costs, although we are willing to expend a very large amount of money to make this a successful community for everyone. And I know that some of you, in addition to having questions about the building and the scripting, are also going to have questions about how the community will function. Not just how will the musket work, but also how do you plan to support nations? How you talk about quality of these nation applicants, and I've been working really hard on my group, but how are you guys actually going to support us once we are in the community? More than happy to answer questions like that. So by all means, ask away about whatever you think that you are most curious about. And unless any of the developers or Jack, unless you guys have anything to say, we can open up the floor to questions.
I think we're all set to jump straight into those.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to clear the request to speak. So if you've requested to speak, don't do it just yet. I'm going to clear them. And then first come, first serve. So whoever requests first, I'll bring you guys up in order. So it looks like Misty, you were quickest on the draw. So we'll let you ask a question. Behave yourself up here. You hear me? Okay. What's up, Misty?
Hi. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, what's up?
First of all, when it comes to being in game and accessories, are we going to have a campaign-based system where it's like all accessories in a certain section of it are whitelisted, or is it going to be a whitelist that is a very select amount of items?
I don't think I understand exactly what you're asking, but I do think I get most of it. We are definitely planning on having the ability of exchanging some certain accessories, packs and hats. We've got hotkeys for them, obviously, and we'll be scripting those functions accordingly. So we would like it to be the case that these accessories are exchangeable, especially since I don't know how other nations, I don't know the specific details of how other nations organize their regiments, but I know that British regiments were organized in such that battalions usually had light detachments, usually had grenadier detachments. Those companies would make up part of the larger battalion. So you'd have line companies, a grenadier company, and light companies. And we do want those companies to be detachable and recognizable from
George, that wasn't my question.
I think she meant like. I think she meant like.
I don't know what you're asking.
She means
like
like
hairs.
yeah, like
hairs. Yes.
Yeah, that's simple.
Oh my
stuff.
god.
Yeah, I thought you were asking
Oh
like a
my
complex
God.
question.
Oh, you
I thought
mean
you were
like
asking something meaningful. I'm sorry.
Fuck.
you mean like the
All-
catalog?
All hairs will be whitelisted except the
Yeah.
hair that Misty wears.
Yeah,
No.
I'm gonna make you bald, but everybody else gets it. I'm sorry. I really thought you were asking something meaningful. I'm sorry.
No. When have I done anything
Send
but
her back
stuff
to the
studies?
masses.
God.
Yeah, go
No,
back. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
eliminated.
All right. All right. Let's go with Dat Cool Doge. What we got? Oh, no, maybe not. Okay, we'll go to the next speaker. Let's bring him up. Something.
Make sure you're checking there.
Yeah.
Hello.
yeah. Hello.
All right.
I'm
so
not really sure how to pronounce your username, but go ahead with your question.
Imagine your average hegemony battle. Would that be similar to an average Waterloo battle?
Okay, yeah, I definitely get what you mean by this question. I think a lot of people will find what Hegemony produces to be at the same time both familiar and a little bit more than what we are used to in campaigns. We're definitely going for larger scale battles, and we want to feature some innovative new features that kind of improve on some lacking qualities from campaigns, but we don't want to neglect having patrol maps where nations can have skirmishes with each other. So I think that a main battle, you might say, is familiar-ish. It will definitely have most of the qualities that you would probably find in campaigns, but also definitely more features that improve on the previous model.
But there will be flags in the right.
Yes, there will be flags, but that's what I was going over in the maybe if you weren't here at the beginning of the community stage. We're going to be having flag-based company systems and fully communicative generated code-based servers. So those two main features will be very familiar for people. Having a code that you enter to join a game that connects to other battlefields if necessary, and you have companies that have to keep their flag and you spawn on those flags. It won't be like round-based line battles where you get in line, you shoot at each other. If you die, you got to wait until the round's over. It's not really the direction of the Napoleonic genre anyway. So yeah, we plan to have flags and such. Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Okay,
In
awesome.
addition to that, just not off the question, a main thing we're going for here is to not have it be like the Waterloo battles where it's just 35 minutes on a map where lines just run around and shoot each other, but we're trying to have more meaningful battlefields and mechanics to make it to where certain points of the map are actually advantageous to use rather than just a building being more hindrance than actually useful to garrison or something like that. So we're trying to make it to where it's not just 35 minutes where the only thing impactful might be a river or a map border. And then
Yeah,
other than that,
absolutely.
it's just you shooting at each other and running around.
Yeah, Shark is totally right. We want to make sure that the garrisons are meaningful and worthy of contesting. But what we have to draw a balance with is just making sure that two teams don't end up Zerg rushing the same objective, and then it's no longer a line battle. You know what I mean? So that's what our aim is, and I think that we're on a very clear path towards achieving that. But we'll definitely be bug fixing and testing things to make sure that that's actually achieved and not just on paper. All right. Let's go to the next question. Jaeger Cine. I'm gonna bring you up.
Oh god.
Yeah, sorry. Is he gonna come up?
Gazed. What separates us from being a copy of EI is that we're actually not the same at all, and we know how to develop and actually have timetables for development rather than just throwing money at people maybe if they develop. So you're not going to have to wait 6 months for a pistol model to get made.
Yeah,
So-
if I can add on to
Age.
that before we go to Jaeger's question, I can tell you in detail the difference between Hegemony and EI. A lot of people, I think more or less fairly, were asking me, well, how is this going to be any different from, Project Borodino? Then you get all this hype around a game that was supposed to help EI get back onto its feet and maybe assume a little bit of self-sufficiency for itself. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly what its objective was. And I couldn't tell you how little a lot of the EI developers that I had to work with really cared about trying to build a map or a gameplay style that was its own and independent from campaigns. Not necessarily to spite anybody that worked at campaigns, whether Gory or any of the people who worked for him, but necessarily because EI was just a vehicle for being in campaigns, and that was not what the community was supposed to be about. And a lot of people kind of questioned the legitimacy of anything that we could do on our end as EI administrators, because at the end of the day, it wasn't what we say goes, it was what Gory says goes. And that's still the case in the community today. The difference being is that the developers that I have now, we are all committed on to this idea, which is why, as you can see, the proof is in the pudding. A lot more development has come out. We've been a lot more open with you guys about what's gotten done and what is to be done in the future. We've got some Trello pages that we're going to try to make public so that people can get an idea of what our roadmap is. But there's a huge difference that is palpable between what EI is and what Hegemony will be. Jaeger, what can we do for you, man? What's your question?
He's
Is
definitely
it
himself.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right,
Well,
honestly,
maybe not.
send
back
one
to
away.
hell?
Yeah. Send it
Yeah.
back. All right. Cool boy 2025. We'll take your question. All right, cool boy. You're muted, but what is your question?
Yo, is it gonna be easy system to like shoot or some shit like that?
Is it going to be easy to shoot?
Yeah, Waterloo.
Depends how good you
I
are.
assure you, I will not make it difficult to shoot your musket. I think that's probably our primary priority is that when you shoot your musket, it will be a simple process.
Do you mean
It's-
if it's going to be accurate or inaccurate? Perhaps is that what you're asking?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. But another
Oh.
thing is, wait, what is the cap? Like, what are you guys trying to extend it to? Like the number?
Oh, as far as the size of battles goes,
Yeah, I think that's what
like
he's asking.
you know how Waterloo is like 150 or like 250.
yeah. Okay, so we understand each other. Yeah. So we think in our wildest dreams, because of the optimizations that our scripters assure us that they're capable of, as long as we can keep the part count and the triangle count under a certain threshold. They think that they can eventually get us to the point of 250 versus 250. Now, that's not going to be our primary objective. We're not going to say that this game is not done until we can get 250 people on one side of the damn battlefield. We are more than happy to start off at probably what we're used to, around 140 to 160, and then we can continue optimization up to as high as we can feasibly get it. We would love for these battles to become huge, because I think that when these battles are larger scale, they attract the kind of attention that helps the groups grow to a scale to fit the maps. Especially since Sharpie, I think that you've got a little bit more expertise on this, but our map is considerably bigger than Waterloo, right? It's like 10K by 15K, so almost double the size. So
We're not going to be using all of it. It's just
right.
to not have it to where the map ends at the map border, so you just are staring off a cliff into nothingness when you're at the map border. But also it just allows us to, because Fuentes de Onyoro, the battle itself was very widespread. It took place over 3 days, and so at the first day of the battle, it was all the way up in the north, and third day of the battle, there was a lot of engagement in the south. So basically, it just allows us to get a variety of maps with different play styles, ideally.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
the town of Fuentes de Onyoro itself is going to be
Huge.
a fucking urban slog fest. That's just going to be pain. That's not going to be our main one that we push out first for play testing and stuff, because that would be painful to be like beta testing that, and you're like, this is
Yeah.
hell. I'm literally in Baghdad right now. But there's going to be ones with rivers, ones without rivers. There's also 2 forts that are on the battlefield, so ideally siege tech in the future. But there's a lot of space to work with, and a lot of different just maps with different types of metas that'll probably come out of it as well.
All right. Now that we've handled that one, why don't we go to Hawk? He's got a question. Hey, Hawk,
Hello.
how you doing, man?
I'm
Remember,
doing fine.
cool boy.
If I could, there's like 2 different, but I have 2 questions, different in subject matter. But first and foremost,
Sure.
in terms of the flow of the game, obviously campaigns is very chaotic and very fast paced. So my question is, overall for the gameplay, have you thought of the flow and speed of the game at all, or how quick you'll, movement speed, that sort of thing, the speed of capping and taking flags, that sort of thing. Is it supposed to be as chaotic, maybe a little bit slower, faster even? Have you thought of that at all?
Yeah, of course. In fact, Alex, if you want to jump in at any time, by all means. I know that we've talked about this in particular, but I think our aim is to make line leaders just a tad bit more cautious about maybe doing something a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too risky. We want there to be, sort of higher risk to unsupported advances. And I think that the garrisoning features that we're planning to involve will allow troops to actually contest over a period of 2 or 3 minutes. So like a serious contesting of a particular objective, like a town or a villa or a farmhouse, that kind of bring a sense of importance to fighting over objectives. It's not just, oh, I'm gonna take this and then they're gonna send 60 guys and they're gonna push us out and it's just gonna be like World War I trench warfare. We do want combatants to be intentional about the decisions that they make to either take or abandon a settlement, to try to push the enemy either up into a river or up against the map border to try to stack wipe them. But we don't want the primary function of these line battles to just be to try to pin somebody in a corner and to sack wipe them. Because although that is fun, especially if you're on the winning side, if you're Dramaticus, who I know is here, he is my favorite of marshals. Yes, if you're Dramaticus and you've got 84E putting somebody in a leg lock, and they're going to pin them up against the map border, that's very fun if you're on the winning perspective. But we know for the rankers, especially on the losing team, that's a little less fun, and it can feel very repetitive. And not only can it feel very repetitive, it's very hard to come back from that kind of demoralizing stack wipe. It's not impossible, but we want to focus more on the combat between buildings, between towns, between settlements, and over different physical landmarks like rivers and such, than trying to pin your enemy in a corner.
So you think there'll be
Alex,
like
if you have anything to add?
Kind of going off of that, we essentially want to allow armies different routes to achieve victory from. So I know in campaigns it's basically just racking up, a certain amount of points in a certain amount of time, and whoever has the most amount of points basically wins. We want to achieve alternatives to that, and a few of those ways we can achieve that is via asset control. So like KG3 mentioned, controlling a building might replenish points for, over a certain amount of time. Another thing that we talked about was having lines of supply and retreat. So obviously, you'd have to protect that line. And, if it gets cut off, your army essentially either doesn't have a way to escape, or you essentially get choked out because you won't have any, way to get your ammunition for your cannons or your guns or anything like that. And you'll also be disconnected from your main spawn point, which, would also be a huge issue. So we don't want to end up with the same redundant battle each time, just, against another opponent. We want to allow flexibility to kind of flourish in this community. We want to give commanders the option to, brainstorm and come up with new ways to defeat enemies and stuff like that. So we want things to really play out on a large scale, and we want people to be creative in the way that they defeat their enemies and things like that. So
our whole goal is to make engagements more meaningful rather than it just being push-pull tactics that campaigns that we've kind of gotten accustomed to, and just honestly with raids as well, where it's just a sort of elastic line which just goes forward and backward, forward and backward. Your line doesn't have spawns, your line does have spawns, and then it's just people basically throwing themselves at each other until one just gets lucky and takes their flag or some shit like that.
You want it to be more tactical, basically.
Yeah, that has never been true of Sharpie, because our last battle against Fourth Corps in campaigns, that's what that was. It was push pull, push pull, push pull, push pull over and over again for about 20 minutes.
What a glorious battle that was.
It was great. It was a fantastic battle, but you do want to get out of that meta where the primary events of the battle are just like, getting pushed, having to fall back, stabilizing, pushing your enemy, they stabilize, they push you back ad infinitum. Definitely want to be a little bit more creative about it. You had a second question, Hawk?
Yeah, a little bit more personal. Sound design. Me personally, sound design is pretty much everything. So stuff like musket sounds, the sounds of cannons and everything. I know that we've talked about it, and I've sent some stuff before. But and obviously we talked about music and stuff like that, just so like everyone else, how important that is to the immersion of my Lego game. But like how much fun it can really be to like have a really crisp volley if the gunshots are just the sound effect for it is like booming.
Absolutely.
So
I think one thing
it was
that
kind of just a question of like how much have we thought about that and how much are we going to go into that.
one thing that campaigns did really well was the music. I think that they did a very good job of customizing their themes because the music really is very fitting for specifically the Napoleonic genre. It's easy to find like maybe colonial era classical Baroque music, and it's really easy to find like Victorian era music. But for the Napoleonic genre, I think that they had a really good playlist. Although I do think that we can improve on the sound of the muskets, the sounds of the cannon fire. I think maybe even hoofbeats potentially in the future. I think that would be very, very appealing, and I think that would bring a lot of allure to our community. So we're going to pay special attention to the quality of the sounds to really sort of up the ante as far as Hegemony's first map project goes. So I totally agree with you. Anybody else have any other points they'd like to make before we bring up the next question?
So we will be taking suggestions for music as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Our sound guy is going to be Jack, who is the British Empire 1. So if you guys have any suggestions for music, or if you have any suggestions for musket sounds, although I think Sharpie, you came across a really, really good bounty of musket sounds, cannon sounds very recently. So
You have to send me those.
Yeah. Sharpie, if you'll send those to Hawk and just you guys can coordinate on that.
Bad. Yeah.
Somewhere up.
Okay.
All right. That's really all I wanted to ask. Thanks. Long live VGB.
Long live. All right. Who we got next? CSBBK. We'll bring you up. right,
I just wanted to know, how long can we expect line battles and skirmishes to last?
That's a good question. I think that will largely come out of the playtest period because we have to balance how long do people want to be there.
We're not gonna. I think our limit, our max, we're not gonna go up to like an hour or past an hour because that is hell. Like I think there was one community battle which was like 55 minutes, and I think my anxiety and blood pressure shot through the roof to maybe dangerous levels over that time. But I think obviously events will probably be like 35 minutes to 40, but that's obviously going to be at the discretion of the people planning the events and how much the tech is liked for certain engagements. So skirmishes might be shorter, line battles might be longer. But I mean, that's another thing where we're trying to emphasize community. We're not going to force it to be where it's only like 35 minutes or something. That was something campaign says you literally set a round as long as you want. It's just the community was like, okay, 35 is the where most battles should be done, and that's where people set them at. So
yeah, we don't have a strict vision for how long these battles should go on. So whatever you guys think ultimately is the best amount of time to feel like you got your money's worth. You don't feel like you showed up for a 20-minute event or whatever, and then it's over, and then it's more trouble than it's worth. But we also don't want to have people there for 60 minutes, just eyes bleeding as they're trying to capture Fuentes or Pocovilo or what have you. So we definitely want to make sure that this is a community meta that's reached rather than us trying to weigh a certain time on you guys as far as skirmishes and line battles go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on. Can somebody send him down? We're going to move on to the next requester, that Cool Doge again. We got another question from him.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's up?
All right. So I've got two very different questions. First of all, in terms of groups at the beginning, will you be prioritizing development and nation quality over members, or vice versa?
That's a fantastic question. I think Alex and I can both speak to the fact that what we are prioritizing is what we can reasonably expect to be the longevity of these groups. EI had a revolving door of nations all the time, and that was kind of upsetting because we don't want to accept nations that are big but very sloppily thrown together in the hopes that maybe they'll make something stick, or nations that are tiny and underdeveloped and unsupported, which critically was one of the major flaws of EI, and they couldn't get up off of their feet. There's a certain amount of money and time and development that we expect on our end to be have been invested already into a particular nation. But when it comes down to a very high quality small nation or a medium to low quality large nation, we do firmly believe that we have both the willpower and the means to support a smaller group to make it as large as a larger nation, rather than hoping that a larger nation will get its act together later on down the road. Because ultimately, if it falls apart, it's embarrassing really for everybody involved. It's embarrassing for those group leaders. It's embarrassing on our part because it speaks to the quality of groups that we're willing to allow in our community. So we have no qualms against supporting smaller nations and accepting them even over larger nations if we think that they have a better chance of making a really good and honest go of it and surviving in the long run.
So-
Alex, if there's anything you want to add to that, but I hope that answered your question.
It did, but just to get an idea in my head. So theoretically, a small nation, very good development, very good uniforms, good maps, overall good funding, good Discord. Overall, they rally like 30.
Okay.
Then another group comes in, they rally 80, and their development is at most mediocre. You would accept the small nation, I presume.
In my
Well, I
opinion,
think there's a few more
situational.
qualifications
Yeah.
that we have to
Yeah.
grade, such as that group's leadership, which is
Yeah.
why we do the interest meetings when they initially apply. But I mean, like, if you look at the rubric, like, there's just a ton of criteria that nations have to meet. And I mean, yeah, but really what we're focusing on the most is just longevity. How can this nation progress? Will it progress? So I mean, it just kind of like mostly revolves around like how much the group leader is willing to put into their group, more or less.
It'll be situational. It's not like something we can say right now, like always the small nation with better development or something. Because obviously, if a group is rallying 80, there's probably something going on good there. But that would be something that we can't just set in stone right now, obviously, because it's hypothetical at best. So, yeah. And we don't want to limit ourselves and say, oh, well, back in February, you said smaller nation with better development gets in. And then, yeah, so we're not. It's something where it'll definitely be situational, and I have trust that Gorg has the intuition to make the right choice.
Yeah, Sharpie's 100% right, and so is Alex. I would also just say it's dependent, it's contingent on so much. Like, which nation are they applying for? You know what I mean? Like, even that could throw a whole wrench in things because if you have a Russia that's rallying 40 versus a Russia that's already fully developed and rallying 140, that might be less of a conscionable distinction than say a Hanover that's rallying 30 versus a Hanover that's rallying 60. It all depends. I wish I could give you a definite answer as far as like a rule that will always apply. But I think that that's probably unrealistic and also not really a service to anyone here because I don't want them to think that I've lied to them or that I've intentionally misled them based off of admissions decisions. But we are certainly willing to share what our priorities are so that everybody's clear about what it is that we're really aiming for.
Mm-hmm. Also, I have one last question.
Yes.
So do you see your battles being more like this might be repetitive to you guys, but do you see a lot of battles being more like EI, where like you are not EI, but campaigns where you're constantly focusing on leading your line and capturing flags? Or do you maybe see it more like Men of Wars, where you're skirmishing and it's more tactical engagements than just line combat?
I think we touched on this earlier. I'd say
sorry if you did.
it's gonna be something where obviously we're gonna have to see how playtesting goes, but TLDR, we're trying to have it less be about line versus line all the time, and that's the only goal is to beat the line in front of you, but to be more about actually using parts of the battlefield. So essentially, we want it to be less micro intensive, where whoever has the faster line and faster rankers always wins, but to be a little more strategic and requiring a little more grand strategy rather than how you start up the battle, and then that's pretty much whatever happens from there for the rest of the 35 minutes. But also we want there to be passive skirmishing, like when there's not events, so you don't have to wait for a code, and that's the only way you can get your hegemony fix for the day. So it'll be something we'll definitely be doing in playtesting, but we do want it to be to where it's not limited to where you always have to just, the only events you're going to be having is just line battle extravaganza.
Right.
So, and that's what we're trying to bring with multiple different game modes, like skirmishes, sieges, line battles, and stuff. But it also doesn't mean that there won't be some skirmishing aspects in a line battle. We're not trying to limit it, but that'll be coming out when we are playtesting and we can really see how things mesh together with our ideas. Because obviously it's not going to just match up one-to-one with our original goals and ideas, and we kind of have to change things to match each other.
That's it for me.
Next, dude. I take it.
All right. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. We've got Napoleonic Doom. Napoleonic, come on up.
All
What's
right.
up, man?
Hey, I got a few questions here. So first, are there any checks and balances in place or considered to be put in place between the staff to prevent corruption or bias?
How do you mean?
Like
our community moderators?
Yeah.
I don't think we've had an issue so far. That doesn't mean necessarily that there would never be an issue. But obviously, if you have suspicions about a particular moderator, especially if they belong to, say, EGB, or let's say Italy, because I think those are the two major groups
At the
that have
moment,
moderators
yeah.
on. Yeah, at the moment, we've got 2 from EGB, 3 from Italy. If you had an issue about one from a particular group, you're more than happy to submit a complaint to a founder that doesn't belong to that group. If you want to complain about one of my moderators to Darvelin or to Alex, I have no qualms about that, because ultimately their job is to make sure that the Discord is a safe space for people. It's not a room to aggrandize your own ego. It's not a space for you to sort of go on a power trip. These people are not hall monitors.
Yeah.
Really, their main task is to make sure that the Discord is just relatively free of not safe for work content, no pedos, no Imperial Vandrons. Beyond that, we want you guys to have fun. We want you guys to have a fun, competitive environment. You can talk a little shit. You can beat your chest a little bit, as long as you're not harassing people, as long as you're not, being over the top, as long as you're not sending Discord crashing gifts or what have you. You guys, I can trust you as either adults or adults adjacent to behave yourselves. If there comes an issue where you probably are in violation of one of the rules, then the moderators will let you know beforehand, before they just go and ban you and say, get fucked, L plus ratio. You know what I mean? So that's I think that's probably the most workable way to just make sure that there's no corruption within the moderating team. But obviously, as the community grows, we'll be taking in new moderators from different nations to make sure that there's equal representation there.
Yeah. Second question. I'm sorry if I glossed over this when I was reading the requirements of the rubric or for the thing. But are nations going to be required to have their own maps, or will it be like campaigns where there's a community-wide map?
I don't think that nations will be expected to have a map, but when they apply, or prior to applying. One of the reasons that we ask for you guys to have in-house developers is solely that if you want to have a skirmish map, we should be able to give you basically a zip file full of stuff. And it's not going to be a pain or a headache to try to help you get it installed. You got somebody on your team who can help you get a skirmish map set up, so that you and your guys can patrol and advertise there. We got no qualms, no issues with any of that. We just want to make sure that somebody on your staff, somebody within your group, has the competency to install that without necessarily overburdening the community's central resources. Essentially, no, you won't need to have one outright, but if you want to have one, just make sure that you have the gusto and the competency to have it set up properly.
All right. And my third question: are there considerations, since you mentioned earlier the whole thing with the organization between the regiments? Are there considerations for the uniform script for not only companies but battalions as well? So like 2 layers deep, or will that be like customizable as well?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, especially you guys from EGB, but I'm pretty sure when we had the 92nd Regiment of Foot, we had their uniform separated by battalions. So we had like 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, and then there was supposedly like a 3rd Battalion. Obviously, we couldn't. There's no real like.
We're not going to
uniform.
limit how groups set up their shit unless they make like a. Unless
Right.
they do something really stupid, we might walk up to them and say, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing?" But we're not going to be having like full on like, "Hey, you can't do that because I said so." We're gonna obviously we want groups to try and organize themselves historically because that's what most people enjoy. But we're not going to just crack down the whip on them for like, "Hey, you can't do that because I say so." You can't organize your group like that because we want this to be a community where it's governed by multiple people, and the community really gets to people in the community and the nation leaders get to develop their own group and do that nation building process without us telling them exactly what to do everything.
I suppose it really depends on like the nation as well and the structures, because like for the British Army, for example, the differences between one company and another, if they're both centre, they're both grenadier, or both light companies, isn't really going to be that much. There might be like a change in lettering on their canteen or something like that, but apart from little like tiny details like that, most companies within the same battalion are going to be the same. Unless of course there are different specialization. Like as I said, if they're a light or grenadier, there'll be some differences as well. Yeah.
That's mainly up to the in-house development of that group. Because it's not going to be, we're not going to really have community developers go in and say, "Hey, you have to have Voltigare uniforms or some shit." That's on you. If you want your guys to be pimped out, you got to pimp them out.
Yeah, it's not like we're gonna like send Squire, one of our historians, to just smack you with a book. Like, it's written in this way. You should have it.
If you want to be dripped out, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah, but I'm talking more on the software side, not like the actual within the community side. So will that be supported having not only battalions but companies within those battalions have different uniforms?
I'm not sure I understand what exactly you're asking. Like,
so, like, for the scripters, will they be setting up the ability for groups to set up not only like the regiments and battalion uniforms, but have them be able to have different companies within those battalions have different uniforms as well?
I imagine that could easily be the case, because that's
It's
how
just up
the
to you having the uniforms. That's basically the only limitation because it's just a script where you just have to add a subfolder to something. So it's yeah, it's just up to you having the resources so we can put them in. So
yeah, I was just asking since I'm pretty sure with Gory's tech before campaigns, he only had it limited to companies or battalions or something. So 1 layer deep.
I think we had once an EGB that had 2 or 3 layers. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
So that might have been the case at the start, perhaps, and he changed it later.
I think the first we have gone was platoons.
Yeah.
I don't think did we do platoon? Oh, okay.
Well, I didn't do platoon uniforms.
No. But like in its organization as its own. I think
no, he's talking about the actual like game though, with like how
like
when you
scripts and
press
stuff.
when you press Z to get the uniforms, then there's a certain number of layers. So I think I think layers that went deep was probably for our stuff was probably 2 or 3 because we did battalions, and I think we ended up doing grenadier and center companies. So
yeah, but like after that, it probably is gonna get a bit cumbersome because you'll like flick through maybe 5 tabs before you actually get to the specific uniform you want.
Yeah. Well, what we're saying is it's just down to nation preference. As long as they've got the assets, and as long as it isn't ridiculous, they haven't got like section uniforms where you're gonna have like 12 sections to a regiment or something like that. Then,
well, that's gonna be like an expensive endeavor for them, but
yeah, because you have to pay to upload all those uniforms.
you
anyway.
gotta pay and upload all those uniforms.
Yeah.
But Probably
Look.
not, as far as I'm concerned. It's just battalions for the British. I think that's like the most in depth you can go. I don't know if it's the same for the Italians or the French.
I mean, all the continentals had different ways of organizing their stuff anyway. So
yeah.
Do you have anything else, or we can move on to another person?
No, that's it.
All right,
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. Thanks, man. All right, so let's move on to Napoleonic. Lots of Napoleonic names. Come on up, if you still want to speak, of course. Going
I
once.
thought we already had a Napoleonic.
Going twice. All right, we'll move on. Jormanheim, we'll invite you to speak. What's up, man? What's your question?
Hello there. Hello. You can hear me fine?
Yes, I can hear you great.
All right. So, just a question for the battles in Hegemony. Will there be weather effects like rain, snow, like dust storms if you're in Egypt? And if so, for like rain, will they affect things like misfires?
I'd say for rain and misfires, I think probably won't add a misfire thing because that would be the most annoying thing ever to be a ranker in a line. You're like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I've had 3 misfires in a row. This shit is ass. But that'll be something we have to obviously test out, and we'll probably poll the community on if we really need to. Like, hey, do you want to have hell and have misfires, or do you just kind of want it to be aesthetic rain? And with the weather effects, that'll probably be something coming out after initial release, because that we kind of want to get you guys a game to play, and then we can make those quality of life changes as we develop. But yeah, I'd say in the future we would want to see how see about making those weather effects and making sure they don't explode some child soldiers like Chromebook is playing on. So that'll be something to look into. But yeah, we are looking into adding those.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, let's move to the next question. Okay, we've got. If it'll load.
Gaze Dragon.
Yeah, Gaze Dragon. Why don't you come on
Yes. He doesn't have a microphone, but I told him raise your hand anyway. I'm gonna read the question for you. Yeah, because I've immediately been pinged very well. His first question was, and I quote, "What would separate you from being a quote-unquote copy from Europa Invicta?"
Yeah. I'm more than happy to take on that question. Hegemony is not just named that way because I thought it sounded cool. Everything about this community is very intentional, and one of the features that we want to exceed EI into a degree campaigns, although this isn't really campaigns' fault. One way in which we want to really exceed what EI was able to accomplish is to really stress the importance of diplomacy and warfare. We want people to be able to make treaties, alliances, fight large coalition-sized battles against one another, and to fight for a specific sort of currency called national prestige. We want there to be like a ranked leaderboard where nations gain and lose prestige based off of the severity of a win or a defeat. And at the end of a given campaigning season, where all nations are, obliged to declare war or declare alliances with each other to battle over domination, either of their region or of all of Europe, whoever has the most prestige at the end of a campaigning season is declared hegemon, and their leader is declared master of Europe. And obviously there'll be an off season, and then once we enter the new campaigning season, you'll be able to fight for the title of hegemon. This really emphasizes the aspect of the community that is about competition, because as soon as Liftius basically made it so it was practically illegal to declare war on somebody, unless it was like a friendly war where everybody was, just cupcakes and rainbows about it. As soon as you could decline a war, it kind of like sapped all the vitality out of the community. And it was just, well, we're going to schedule an event this weekend. Why? Because we got 140 guys here who need something to do. They need their fix. Bob My Fish is getting angsty. We got to have two events this weekend, or else it's going to be a problem. We want it to be a little bit more than just than just fighting for the sake of fighting, and then occasionally one nation fights a war, and it's whoever loses has to buy the other one ice cream, or I think Germ has to go like deadlift 300 pounds or something like that if he loses to Austria's cores. We want there to be real consequences to winning and losing. We want you guys to be able to have your own treaty outcomes, whether it's subjugation, so things like protectorate nations and client states and whatnot, or the ceding of territory or the ceding of certain currencies. We are wanting to use that community specific function to separate us from EI, and really to separate us from any other community that exists in the Napoleonic genre. So that's what our plan is, more or less. Now those features are entirely workable. It's not going to be set in stone from the very beginning. We want to see what works. So if there's certain changes that we can make to that system to make it more effective, then we're more than happy to hear that out. But that is essentially what makes us different, not just from EI, but from every community.
All right. The second question he had was, how would you bring major nations into hegemony because of these big nations are in Europa and Invicta? I don't think it really has to do with the checklist. It's more like, how do you actually manage to pull in, like reel in a lot of manpower, quote unquote manpower, for the community?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you would be surprised how many people want to make a major nation and to use the success of our community to build that nation from its humble beginnings. I know EGB started off in Waterloo, rallying about 50, and then for the first grand battle we got to about 120, and we thought we were hot shit, and we only went upwards from there. I have no issue with major nations taking that route, and especially if the community is as successful as we expect it to be. We think that these major nations that are applying now for, as it stands, every major nation position that is available, we think that they're really going to be able to take off of the strength of a growing, burgeoning community that has something new to offer to the rest of the Napoleonic genre, rather than the same old, same old. So I think that as far as it goes for like candidates for major nations, we've already got those in spades. All that comes is, now that we've invested in quality groups that have the legs to stand on their own, that have the resources to grow, when we support them financially, we know that their growth will be accelerated, and the interest in the community will burgeon as a result.
All right. That would be all of Gaze Dragon's questions. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we'll move on from him. We will ask, we'll allow I Am Not Charlie to speak. So I Am Not Charlie, you can come on up and ask a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I have a question. You say you are going to make the tech or the gameplay more tactical. So what do you plan on adding or making unique about the tech that will make it more tactical?
Alex, go ahead. I know that you've got a really cool idea.
I don't think it's so much with the actual like musket tech and all that stuff that will make it tactical. It's more so in the way that we allow nations to win. And I went over this earlier, but essentially what we're aiming to do is open up a bunch of different avenues for leaders to win. And a few of those is your traditional beat 'em up, score more points than them. Kind of that route that they have in campaigns and these other communities. But a few more things that we wanted to implement was garrisons, making those valuable, lines of retreat and supply, adding those in. And essentially the way we want our garrisons to work is, if you're garrisoning it, you might have, your points replenished over a certain, period of time. And maybe if you're not holding a certain building, your points actually decrease because you're not garrisoning that one strategic location. Now, as for the line of retreat and supply, essentially what we want to achieve with that is kind of forcing commanders to kind of secure the flanks, because you can't just go balls to the wall and just charge in and forget about everything that's behind you. That's not really how they, did things back in the day, and we want to provide, pretty authentic experience. So what we're going to do with that is we're essentially going to make it so each individual soldier is equipped with like 20 rounds, and once they, finish those rounds, the unit pulls back, they resupply, and then they go back to the front. Now, what that forces commanders to do is they have to prepare for that. They have to be like, okay, the 5th is pulling back. Let's send in, maybe the guard or whatever to kind of like fill their position, And also another thing that we wanted to do with that, that pertains to the line of retreat, is one of the biggest things that I didn't like about campaigns was the border wall situation. Now, what I mean by that is you would basically be forcing an army into a corner and army wiping them, and then things would just kind of like restart, and then the battle would just go on as usual. And that's not really providing a good experience to the rankers or whatever. So what we want to do with the line of retreat is essentially allow commanders a way to pull out, and this will be very important during the campaign battles, the seasons and everything, because that's when prestige and everything really matters. So it's a way to cut their losses and, potentially keep morale in their group high if they're really getting whooped. So what we want to do with this is we want to allow commanders to pull back to a certain area in the map, aka their line of retreat. And once their standard or whatever it might be passes a certain threshold, it starts, a 5-minute timer or a 10-minute timer or whatever it might be. And during that time, they have to essentially perform rearguard action as they did in real life, protect their line of retreat, and then once that timer is, basically spent up, that's when the rest of the army can pull out of the battle zone, I guess you could say, and it essentially ends the match right then and there. So not all matches are going to go on for 35 minutes. They might go on for 20 minutes or 40 minutes. But we will make it so the line of retreat is only accessible after a certain amount of time. So battles won't go on for like 30 seconds and then somebody pulls out to troll the other side. It's not really what we want to achieve. We just want to make sure that during the campaign season, nobody is really forced into having the crap beaten out of them unless, the opposing side has actually checkmated them into that sort of spot, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, alright, well, thank you.
More meaningful
Yeah, of
engagements
course.
that actually impact the rest of the battle, rather than just,
Okay.
oh shit, my flag's gone.
It's
Not
not
just
these
strategy.
cookie cutter battles.
Yeah. So next we have everyone's favorite Waterloo player, Bob My Fish. Come on up, Bob.
God.
Alright, I'll get ready for the timeout.
Here's hoping you have an intelligible question.
Yeah. You know how you've got this big map?
Yeah.
Yeah. All the maps are going to be sections of that, separated from each other, and different servers, yeah?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, not all of the map will be used, I think, as Sharpie was saying beforehand. So, we won't have, these big swathes of territory because, there's a lot to divvy up. So there might be sections of the map that go partially unused or are sort of adjacent to an existing map.
Well, that's good, because my question was, can you make one of those a random raid place, please? Like a team deathmatch thing. Just so people can play the muskets.
Well, obviously,
outside of battles.
One thing a plan is to do is to kind of cycle through maps that we can have as the just main random raid fuck around map, like for each week or each like 3 days or something, to have that automatically done so people aren't just playing on the same map. That's the same field, the same buildings over and over and over again, but they kind of get a different experience.
Yeah, but I'm talking about outside of.
So you want to be able to play the game without having to have like a code or, without having to have a server set up for you?
Or even a team or a group of friends, just so you can get on the game and, you
Like
can have
Waterloo at
two
home.
teams. Sure, like Waterloo at home. I haven't really played that.
I've never played that before.
Make a little map where people can use the muskets and practice with the muskets.
Or just like a free-for-all deathmatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
It's certainly not outside of our reach. So if that's something that garners a lot of attention or gets a lot of backing from the rest of the community, we've got no issues against that necessarily. So
Right. Could you
we'll
also
keep an eye
make
on
it so you know how all for example campaigns maps come from the same game? You know, you put in the same all of them come from campaigns. Can you make it so that all Hegemony games, all the skirmishes and the line battles start from the same game? Is that possible?
Oh, okay. So you mean like whether it's Wagram or whether it's Waterloo, they both come from the campaigns game, like it's a singular game. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
the link,
Yeah, I think that's probably feasible.
because that would help out a lot, I think.
Yeah, if nothing else,
Because I wouldn't want to
certainly innovate that.
have it like EI where you have to go to all these different group pages to play.
Yeah. No, you're not gonna go to like Pocovello in one game, and the next game is Nave d'Aver, and the next one is Fuentes de Oñoro. It won't be like that. Yeah,
Okay.
no, for sure.
It's necessary to have it on one game, otherwise there wouldn't be any points to the codes. So
right.
Okay, and the hopeful random deathmatch thingy.
Okay.
What else was I going to ask? I can't remember. Or something else.
Okay. I will ask somebody else. Thank you, Bob.
All right.
Okay.
You actually didn't cough his lungs out this time.
That's true. I'm surprised he didn't cough up an entire lung.
You get to use the disconnect button.
All right. Tamerlane, you're next. Come on up.
We know.
Hello, you guys hear me?
No,
we can't.
All right, sounds good. I just had a quick question. I don't know if you specified this already, but what will be done to help out like nations or minor nations or whatever? Because I know that anything with top EI with the attitude of just if you're not connected to Andorra or France, then you don't get shit. So what exactly?
Basically, there. Most people don't know this, but for EI's entire existence, there has always been a process by which you can just go to Liftius and ask for free money that you don't have to repay, and he will give it to you. They've always had this available, but they've never publicized it because they didn't want to then get swamped by people who are saying, "Hey, I need 10,000 Robux. It's my daughter's graduation. I need 25,000 Robux here and there and whatnot." So the only people who were ever taking advantage of that were people who were keyed in on the fact that process ever existed, which is a sloppy way of running a community.
Yeah, I never got shit.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure most people didn't. I was one of the only people who was ever paid from EI just because Lithius wouldn't pay you if you didn't ask to get paid. If you demanded to get paid, he'd pay you. They pay you pretty lucratively too. But if you didn't want to get paid or if you didn't, speak up about it, he just assumed that you were fine with working for free. And so instead of this, mob boss situation where if you're friends with the head of the family, then you get all the benefits and whatnot. We want to be able to, especially in the off seasons, whoever is not the declared the hegemon, these groups, according to their size, according to their need, and according to our availability of funds, will be able to receive regular payments of Robux so that they can spend the short off-season period advertising their groups, investing them back into their recruitment efforts, whether they want to use that money to pay their rankers, make payouts to their rankers to go recruit, whether they want to use that for new uniforms, whether they want to use that for traditional advertising, whether they want to use that for sponsorships for their games. That's what grows groups. And the only groups that really grow are the ones with the monetary backing to sustain themselves. We're willing to supplement that monetary backing as is appropriate so that these nations can stay up on their feet and they're not regularly dying, like was the case in EI, unfortunately. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, George.
Of course. All right. Got 4 more questioners. Let's get Wilhelm von Alexander. I'll invite you to speak. And after these 4 questioners, we're actually going to cut it a little bit short since it's gone on for just over an hour.
Hello.
I don't want to keep you guys too long. Hello, Wilhelm. How are you?
Yo, okay. So I want to ask a question. And it's why did Gory really pursue on kicking you guys from EI? EGB?
Well, I guess this isn't a hegemony-related question, but I'm more than happy to entertain it.
You don't have to answer it, but I have one more question after that. But if you want to, go ahead.
Okay. Do you have a question related to hegemony, and then maybe we can come back to that?
Yeah, and it's really about what type of nations are you going to be accepting? Like, are they going to be like, is it like from all broads, like all history, or literally anything? What type of nations are you looking for?
Okay, so this is a super good question, because I have meant to address this previously, and I'll specify it now, and I'll make sure that it's public knowledge going forward. But I have actually had regular meetings with our founders to determine what exactly this question: what kind of groups do we want to have in hegemony? What we've come to the decision about collectively, the four of us between Alex, myself, Darvelin, and Proud, is that hegemony is a Napoleonic community. So that will entail groups from after Napoleon's coronation in December of 1804 up until the final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo on the 18th of June 1815. So between 1804 and 1815, that is the time period between which we are willing to accept nations. The community will likely be based between 1812 and 1815, but you definitely cannot have like the I think it was the Helvetian Republic before it was a French client state. The Swiss Confederation went by several other names and then took on a democratic nature in the style of the French Republic. So only the nations that exist during the Napoleonic period will be accepted into the community, and that means no fantasy nations. It means no ahistorical nation, so you're not going to have like a Byzantine Empire, but in 1813. Ultimately, we find that it's super important for us to get this right the first go around, because the entirety of the Napoleonic era is looking at us to see if we can create a viable alternative to not just EI or campaigns, but really to the general sort of normal way of doing things. If we can create something that's better, more serious, more fun, more competitive, that's exactly what we aim to do. And we don't want to have, egregious historical disparities or inaccuracies in these groups, because otherwise that reflects badly on what kind of community we are. So historical nations, and I've heard the question asked about Asian nations. I'll clarify that as well, because we have discussed that exact issue. We are going to strongly encourage, if not mandate, that major nations have an overseas time zone regiment, and we really want to promote the participation of the East Asian community in our battles, because that is a huge underbelly of the Napoleonic community. You would be surprised how many people come from UTC +7 or further in your groups, and they wake up at midnight to show up to some of these battles. Some of them wake up at 5 a.m. to go to a Waterloo battle. And so we want them to be able to enjoy our community just as much as anybody else does. So we're more than happy to encourage and incentivize nations to start Asian time zone regiments so that we can have Asian time zone battles where they can participate and maybe have regional battles or grand battles for that section of the community, so that their needs are also seen to. With that said, we won't be accepting specifically Asian nations. No, Napoleonic Qing dynasty, Napoleonic, Tokugawa or Korea or Vietnam, largely because then you run the gamut. It's never going to be just Napoleonic British Raj or the Napoleonic Mughal dynasty, because then you could make a tenuous connection. Okay, well, the Mughals did actually fight the British. The British did have contact with the Indians. If you accept these Asian nations, you have to allow a hegemony Mongolia or hegemony Vietnam or hegemony Burma, hegemony Malaysia or Indonesia or Philippines. I've really heard every single suggestion, every single nation that you could possibly ask for. These people are asking like, hey, can we make this group in your community? And it's not that we have anything against those nations. It's simply that this is a community of a Napoleonic character. And to maintain that, we cannot have, Napoleonic Zimbabwe, Napoleonic South Africa, Napoleonic Zulu people. You know what I mean? So that's going to be our position going forward on admitting nations, what qualities they must possess before they can even be considered for an interest meeting. But thank you for your question.
All right. And I'm just gonna cancel on that Gory kicking you from EI. I'm just gonna ask. I'm gonna ask Chris with another question though, and it's, will it be strictly only the major nations participating, or will it be also allowing the minor and the most like nations like Holland or Westphalia or some German small state? Will they be included? Will they be merged with other nations?
I don't. Does anybody understand what his question is?
Yeah, he wants to know.
Basically, are small states allowed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're
It's not just gonna be the. It's not just gonna be 5 nations.
It's not just gonna be like France, Austria, Italy, Britain,
All right.
Russia.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah,
Because
no
that's
problem.
fucking boring if it's just 5
Yeah,
nations.
that's super boring. I would never even consider that. Okay, Seth Brock, we're gonna bring you up to speak and ask you a question. Hey Seth, what's going on?
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I'm just going
What's
to
the
build off. Earlier, you guys were saying how regiments might have to fall back if they run out of ammo and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember that or not, but my question is basically, wouldn't you have to have a general unit somewhere where they can oversee the entire battle and say, "Oh, the right flank's falling back," stuff like that, where they can coordinate the entire battle from afar?
Yeah, we definitely want to be able to feature a command team that is sufficiently mobile. So we would love to have them on horseback from the get-go, so that it's not just them walking around trying to salvage the entirety of a 160-man front from from afar, or if they can't see both flanks. We do want general officers to be able to be mounted and capable of accounting to each other. This unit has to fall back. This unit's going to hold until they can return to the battle. So we definitely want there to be a bit of a more overall grand strategy to battles, rather than just simple my line's faster than yours sort of tactic, or my line caught yours with its pants down, or you're reloading or whatever. We do want it to be a bit more intentional. So if especially since making generals mobile and having a designated team for them makes that easier, that's probably what we're going to go for.
Yeah,
I mean,
and to kind of
you could argue in Waterloo that you technically would need some sort of general command unit. In EGB, we didn't always utilize having an overall commander, and we won quite a few battles doing that. Arguably, maybe we lost some battles because of doing that as well. So the thing, I guess, with this new community would be that there's going to be a bit more stuff for the general. Because in Waterloo, I'm being perfectly honest with you, there's pretty much nothing that the overall commander really needs to do that the line commanders can't do themselves. I say that both as a line commander and as a general staff officer. Like, if the commanders talk to each other properly and coordinate properly and have their lines doing the correct things, then an overall commander isn't needed. That's like how we've won lots of battles before, is when the line commanders work together. And on the other hand, if you're going to lose a battle because the commanders aren't working with each other, like 9 times out of 10, a general staff officer yelling at people to do stuff hasn't actually fixed anything from above, and that's just in context of Waterloo. So it'd be good to see with our new stuff, generals actually having a bit more of a different role than just babysitting line commanders who do stupid things, like it was in Waterloo.
Yeah, I'll get you. And to kind of build on that, say you have 8 regiments in the field. Do you have to field all 8 of them regiments, or can you have one in reserve kind of thing?
It's obviously going to be up to whatever the group wants to do for their battle plan. We're not going to force people through a mechanic to say, hey, you have to start with these people in reserve. Honestly, you can try whatever fucking tactic you want to, but if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we don't want to.
Sure.
We don't want to limit how meta develops in the game by saying, oh, you have to play reserve, because honestly it might be better to play reserve and people won't figure it out, but forcing everybody to do that through the tech is it's not something we want to do.
It's kind of up to the commander type of thing.
Yeah.
Very, thanks, boys.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we got 2 more questioners. Let's go to. Sorry. Yeah, let's go to Shrill. Bring Shrill up. How you doing, Shrill?
Oh god, I hate this guy.
Hello.
Hey, we can hear you.
Hi. I just wanted to say I haven't been added to the map yet.
Okay, cope. See.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also-
Sharpie can get you set up.
One more thing I wanted to ask. So I kind of came in late. So this map, so when you say they're going to be centered around the same kind of game, how would you delegate? Would there be like a code system, or would it just be like a hub, like a teleportation hub?
Yeah, that's that is something we did touch on that, but no worries. It will be code based, so you'll be able to access a given map based on the sort of accompanying code that it comes with for that server instance. So that's how it'll work. It won't be a hub.
Can't wait to see it.
We'll also probably get out for some of you guys that joined later, sort of
It's like a summary.
Yeah, just a summary so you can gloss over if you miss something.
All right. Is that your question, Trill?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
No, you were
All
smelly.
right. So, Jesus, that's racist. Okay. Last question from CSBBK. Bring you up here a second time. All right. What can we help you with, man?
I wanted to know, how will individual blacklists be handled?
That's a very good question. The safety of our community is at the forefront of everything. Everybody who runs EGB is more or less an adult, and we can take it with the best of them. But we know that we run collectively between Italy, France, and the UK. We run a community of more or less children. And you know, as edgy as most people can be on the internet, because that's how you get your chops. We do need to ensure that we keep the community safe from perfidious influences, undesirable people who will either sexually prey on members of the Napoleonic community, which I'm sure, as you guys are well aware, is very common, unfortunately. Also, people who are spouting, white supremacist rhetoric, or you're, anti-Semitic, or you're misogynistic, making the community unsafe for minors or people of really all walks of life. We have to discipline that kind of behavior accordingly, and we have a strong system of rules that we're very confident in. So we're willing to make the statement clear that everyone here has to abide by the same exact set of rules. Nobody gets a second set of rules just for being proximate to me or Alex or Proud or Darvelin. And that if we suspect that there's reason to believe that you're not going to play by the rules, and that your behavior is going to be detrimental to our reputation as a community, we'll have to ban you from the Discord at the very minimum. We may have to take an additional step and blacklist you, where you can't play any of Hegemony's games, or you can't participate in any of Hegemony's groups. We don't want it to get to that point. And honestly, all that we ask is that everybody behave themselves, they play by the rules, and we can all have fun. So we don't want to have to take that option. We don't want to have to go that route, but we're more than willing to do so if it means keeping the community safe for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I know that ran a little bit long, about an hour and 20 minutes, but we thank you for showing your attention to what we've got on offer. Obviously, we're going to keep in touch with the Devlogs channel. You guys can check there for whatever updates that we've got, if it comes to it. Especially on a planned feature, we'll be utilizing the community polls channel so that you guys get a vote on what is actually featured in the game, or what it is that you would like to see. To something like misfires, that would come down to community poll. We're not going to make that decision on our own, because we ultimately this is made for you guys, and we want to know what you want to experience in the gameplay. So keep an eye on those 2 channels. and we'll have a lot more information about the mechanics of warfare diplomacy coming up soon. I'm in the cut cooking up that, so we'll have that out in no time. And thank you guys again for coming out. Anybody else have anything to say before we close up? All right, I'll take that as enough. All right, guys, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.